Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. An extremely busy next couple of days for the Florida Gators, as not only do you have spring practice taking place, scrimmage on Saturday, the Florida Gators also set to host a ton of top targets over the next couple of days on the recruiting trail. Want to dig into the visitor list, talk about some of the prospects that really stand out to me for this Florida Gators program. Extremely excited to get into it. It is no secret, Billy Napier getting aggressive on the recruiting trail. Before we get into it, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Florida Gator fans. Y'all know I love talking the recruiting trail. We've talked a ton of Florida Gators football on the recruiting trail the last couple of weeks. The support you guys have shown truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with what I think has emerged as the top target for the quarterback position for this Florida Gators program. That is four-star quarterback Antoine Hill from the state of Georgia. And when you talk about Antoine Hill, I think the first thing you want to talk about is the upside that he has as a quarterback over the next couple of years. Now, are there some inconsistencies to his game? Absolutely. But when you turn on the film, not many quarterbacks across the country have the pure arm talent that Antoine Hill brings to the table. This is a guy that not only can attack the deeper third just about as good as any quarterback in this 2025 class. What separates Antoine Hill from me is how he can attack the boundary. You look at how modern day offenses at the college level are trying to attack defenses. It largely has to do with space. And there are just, quite frankly, not a lot of quarterbacks that have the arm talent and arm strength to consistently test teams on the boundary. Antoine Hill is one of those quarterbacks. This is a guy that effortlessly can spray the football all around the field, attack really every blade of grass on the football field. And when you have a quarterback that can make the amount of throws that Antoine Hill can make, it really does open up your offense. Antoine Hill, a guy that, yes, working through some things mechanically, a guy that has been extremely productive at the high school level, over 7,000 passing yards over the last 2 years, 79 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Another thing that stands out in my notes on the film is what he can do from an athletic standpoint. This is a guy that not only can make it happen with his legs, but a guy that excels extending plays, keeping his eyes downfield, and really throwing off platform, which is another aspect of the quarterback position that you're seeing a little bit more popular over the last couple of years. Quarterbacks that can extend plays, allow their wide receivers to continue to work down the field. But you need a quarterback that not only is athletic enough to extend plays, you need a quarterback that can throw off platform, make nothing, I should say, something. Antoine Hill is a playmaker, a guy that can throw off platform, can hit every spot on the field. And again, a guy that is probably the highest or one of the highest upside quarterbacks in this 2025 class. And I mean, really what excites me the most is take a look at that quarterback room and what it could be over the next couple of years. DJ Lagway, by far the highest upside quarterback and probably the best quarterback in that 2024 class. And then Antoine Hill in the 2025 class. You are looking at one of the most talented quarterback rooms across the country for this Florida Gators program. Antoine Hill, one of my favorite quarterbacks, a massive target for the Florida Gators. And I'd probably say, as we sit right now, Florida's probably the leader in the clubhouse for Antoine Hill. He's on campus today. Now, another guy that's on campus today for the Florida Gators and a really exciting wide receiver to talk about, that's Vernell Brown. Obviously, his father connected to the Florida Gators program. Vernell Brown, I'll come out and say it. You get Eugene Wilson vibes from Vernell Brown on the film. This is a wide receiver that is probably the most dynamic wide receiver in the country with the football in his hands. You can tell on the film, they gave him the Eugene Wilson treatment where it's, hey, we're going to get the football into your hands as many ways and as many times possible throughout a game. And Vernell Brown, his ability to have that short area quickness, make people miss in phone booths, has really good contact balance. This is a guy that is extremely comfortable having the football in his hands. I think has some work to do in terms of how polished he is as a route runner. But when you look at him after the catch, you know that he can start running some really clean routes as well. Extremely productive, 70 catches for over 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns at the high school level his junior year. He's going to be on campus. with Antoine Hill. Vernell Brown, another top target for the Florida Gators, and two really high upside guys on the offensive side of the football. Now you get to the defensive side, and it is very clear over the last two recruiting classes where Billy Napier is really trying to accumulate his talent, and that's on the defensive line. Obviously, LJ McCray in the 2024 class, they're hosting a ton of top targets on the defensive line as well. And I want to start with, one of my personal favorites for the Florida Gator fans that have been listening for the last couple of months. I've been banging the table for a guy like Myon Charles from Port Charlotte, Florida. I would categorize him as a game wrecker, right? 6'4", 300 pounds. You take a look at what he's done on those camp circuits. This is a guy that when you see him one-on-one, not many people have been blocking Myon Charles. Extremely violent hands, knows how to use those hands, disengage from offensive linemen. Then you take a look at him with the pads and helmet on Friday nights. This is a guy that he really challenges interior offensive linemen with his ability to get off the football and use his hands, right? A lot of those guys on the inside struggle with the athleticism that Myon Charles brings to the table with the size that he has. And this is a guy that I think has a ton of upside. I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of ends this recruiting cycle as one of the top defensive linemen in this class, probably top 100 national prospect. Massive fan of Myon Charles. Massive fan of what the Florida Gators are trying to do on the line of scrimmage. I think Billy Napier knows what he needs to get done with this program over the next couple of years, right? 2 years at the SEC level. He knows what it takes to win at the SEC. And I think it comes against the line of scrimmage. He's making a clear effort to accumulate that talent. Myon Charles, just one of the top targets for this Florida Gators program on that defensive line. Next guy I want to talk about is one of the higher upside edge rushers that you see in the country. Just committed to USC last weekend, but now will be on campus for the Florida Gators today. And that is Isaiah Gibson, teammates with Antoine Hill. But more importantly, you start talking about what Isaiah Gibson brings to the college level as an edge rusher. Extraordinary length, but combines that length with a phenomenal get off. This is a guy that can attack the outside shoulder of offensive tackles at an extremely high level. You kind of talk about him like you talk about Antoine Hill, and you were to take a checklist to elite caliber traits for edge rushers, there's not really a box that Isaiah Gibson does not check. I think he has a ton of growth potential to maybe get up to 260 pounds, maintain that athleticism at 6'4", 245 pounds, twitched up at the edge rusher spot, has that length, probably needs to use that length a little bit more, be taught how to use that length. But this is a guy that has a ton of upside and has gotten it done at the high school level, 17 sacks, 55 quarterback hurries as a junior in the state of Georgia. Best friends with Peyton Joseph as well. I think that certainly helps the Florida Gators' efforts to flip him from USC. Last guy I want to talk about, and one of the more physically imposing defensive linemen that you see in this 2025 class, that's Auburn commit Malik Arrey. This is a guy that at 6'5", 320 pounds, he is just a massive guy for interior offensive linemen to deal with. You talk about, kind of like Myon Charles, just a game wrecker from the inside, a guy that is super physically imposing for interior offensive linemen. That's Malik Arrey. I think he blends that with some high upside athleticism for that size. This is a guy that is going to give opposing offenses a lot of problems to get him blocked up at the college football level. Carries 320 pounds extremely well. And again, going back to kind of the goal of Billy Napier in this recruiting class, and that is to establish the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the football. We've talked about it. One of the biggest weaknesses I think Florida has had over the last couple of years is the lack of depth on that defensive line. Even going back the last couple of years when you had some good guys like Gervin Dexter, didn't seem like ever Florida had 2-3 deep guys on the defensive line that could really impact the game. I think Billy Napier is trying to change that by getting guys on the defensive line, getting a lot of talent on the defensive line from that recruiting trail. Malik Arrey, certainly one of those guys. We'll cut it at that. Again, Florida's been extremely aggressive. They've had a ton of top talent on campus over the last couple of days. Isaiah Gibson, Myon Charles, Malik Arrey, Antoine Hill, Vernell Brown. Massive opportunity for the Florida Gators to get it done on the recruiting trail. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. If any commitments happen this weekend, we'll be covering it. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.